Imagine you stand before a mirror, not in a fleeting, casual glance, but in a moment of unnerving stillness. The light in the room seems to dim, the background noise fades, and all that exists is you and the reflection staring back. The face is familiar, of course, the same contours of bone and skin you've seen 1,000 times. The lines around your eyes were earned from deadlines met and anxieties weathered. The faint, practiced smile is the one you offer to colleagues and strangers, a silent password for social passage. But as you hold your own gaze, a cold, quiet dread begins to seep into the room, a question forming not in words, but in a visceral, gut-level tremor. Whose life is this? This isn't a fleeting moment of melancholy or a simple bad day. This is a profound and terrifying a recognition that the person looking back at you is a meticulously constructed collage, assembled from pieces of other people's expectations. Your father's definition of success is there, etched into the career path you chose. Your mother's fears are there, woven into the safe, predictable relationship you maintain. The ideals of your culture are reflected in the clothes you wear, the ambitions you chase, the very way you hold your body as if to apologize for the space you occupy. You have become a masterpiece of conformity, a living monument to the approval of others, and the sculptor was you. But you don't remember ever picking up the chisel. The chilling paradox is this: you have succeeded. By all external metrics, you are winning the game. The promotions came, the social invitations arrived, the markers of a good life had been checked off one by one. You have played your role so perfectly that the audience is applauding. But you, the actor, feel nothing but the hollow echo of their praise. The applause isn't for you. It's for the character you've created, the ghost that inhabits your skin. You are the understudy to your own existence. So, where did you go? When was the last time a choice felt truly your own, born not of calculation or fear, but of a deep, resonant, and perhaps irrational desire? When was the last time your laughter wasn't a social lubricant, but an uncontrollable eruption of genuine joy? This is the great, unspoken crisis of the modern soul. We are haunted by a freedom we claim to possess but dare not use. We stand in a prison whose bars are forged from compliments and whose walls are built with the fear of being misunderstood. We are told to be ourselves. But what does that even mean when ourselves have been out piece by piece since the day we were born? The path of least resistance, the one paved with gold stars and social validation, leads to a destination we never chose. A beautiful, comfortable, and utterly empty house where a stranger with your face lives. What if the map you've been so diligently following leads only to someone else's treasure? What if the very things you believe you want, the success, the security, the acceptance, are not your desires at all, but echoes of a script handed to you so long ago you've mistaken its lines for your own thoughts? This feeling of profound dislocation, this sense of being a phantom in your own story, it is not a personal failure. It is not a sign that you are broken. It is a symptom of a much deeper, more pervasive condition. It is a sign that you are beginning to wake up inside the machine. And to understand this machine, to truly grasp the scale of the architecture that surrounds you, we must first dare to look at the blueprints. We must unmask the hidden forces that have been quietly designing our reality from the shadows. That chilling realization in the mirror, that feeling of being a stranger in your own skin, is not a malfunction. It is the designated function of a system you were born into. You feel this way because you have been meticulously trained to, not by a shadowy cabal of villains in a smoke-filled room, but by the most loving and well-intentioned people in your life. Your parents, your teachers, your friends. You have been shaped by the invisible hand of a force so pervasive, so foundational to our species, that we rarely ever name it. The profound, primal terror of the void. At its core, the human animal is terrified of meaninglessness. We are born into a universe that offers no inherent script, no prayer-written purpose. We are simply here, and the sheer, unburdened freedom of that reality is so overwhelming, so crushing in its demand for self-creation, that we will do almost anything to escape it. This is where society offers its grand, seductive bargain. Give me your authentic self, it whispers, and I will give you a purpose. Give me your chaotic, unpredictable impulses, and I will give you a clear, well-lit path. Surrender your terrifying freedom, and in return, I will grant you the comfort of belonging. This is the deal we all make, most of us unconsciously, before we even learn to speak. We trade the wilderness of the soul for the safety of the cage. The French philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre gave this act a name, mauvaise foi, or bad faith. It is the ultimate act of self. We pretend to ourselves into the world that we are not radically free. We act as if our roles the diligent employee, the loving spouse, the responsible citizen are fixed, essential parts of us, as solid and unchangeable as a stone. We say, I have no choice. I have to do this. When the terrifying truth is that we are choosing at every single moment. We choose the cage because the alternative, the dizziness of freedom that Søren Kierkegaard spoke of, is simply too much to bear. Kierkegaard knew that the greatest enemy of the individual was not a tyrant or a state, but something far more insidious. The crowd, he famously declared. The crowd is untruth, for in the crowd, we can dissolve our responsibility. We can outsource our morality. We can adopt the group's thoughts, the group's passions, the group's hate, and feel the exhilarating rush of certainty without ever doing the agonizing work of discovering our own. The psychologist Carl Jung provided the psychological blueprint for this mechanism with his concept of the persona. The persona, named after the masks worn by actors in Greek drama, is the social face you present to the world. It is the curated, polished, and acceptable version of you, designed to make a specific impression and navigate social interactions smoothly. The persona isn't inherently evil. It is a necessary tool. You cannot show up to a funeral with the same face you wear at a wedding. But a catastrophic error occurs, an error our modern world encourages at every turn. When we forget that we are wearing a mask, we start to believe the persona is our true self. Its desires become our desires. Its fears become our fears. Social media is the grand temple for the worship of the persona, a place where we meticulously craft and filter our masks, then offer them up for the validation of likes, shares, and comments from other people's masks. The true self, that messy, complex, contradictory, and divine core of our being, is starved in the dungeon below, while the persona is celebrated in the palace courtyard. This isn't just a personal choice. It's a system of conditioning that begins in the crib. As a child, you learn that certain behaviors earn you a smile, a hug, a reward. These are the building blocks of your persona. Other behaviors, the tantrums, the strange questions, the moments of wild, untamed nonconformity are met with disapproval, punishment, or the subtle but devastating withdrawal of affection. This is not malice. It is how we domesticate a human being. It is, as Friedrich Nietzsche warned, the triumph of herd morality. The herd values safety, predictability, and cohesion above all else. It has no use for the disruptive genius, the radical visionary, the lone wolf who walks their own path. The herd fears the individual who defines their own good and evil, for that person threatens the very fabric of the collective bargain. So it creates a world where the highest virtue is to be agreeable, to be understood, to fit in. The result is a world of beautifully crafted masks, and underneath them, a silent, suffocating emptiness. This process does more than just make you feel hollow. It actively shapes the world you perceive, creating invisible walls and chains that limit your potential in ways you have yet to even imagine. The consequences are not just emotional. They are neurological, perceptual, and they are silently dictating the very limits of your life. The cage we have been discussing is not merely a metaphor for emotional discontent. It is a tangible, neurological architecture. Every time you have suppressed a genuine impulse in favor of a socially acceptable one, you have done more than just betray a feeling. You have strengthened a neural connection. Think of your brain as a vast, dense forest. The first time you think a thought or perform an action, you trample a faint path through the undergrowth. The second time, the path becomes a little clearer. After thousands of repetitions, the path is no longer a path. It is a 4-lane highway. The thoughts of the persona, I must be agreeable, I must not fail, what will they think, are now superhighways in your mind. Your brain, in its relentless pursuit of efficiency, will naturally and automatically shuttle your consciousness down these well-worn routes. A genuine, authentic, and novel thought that requires hacking a new trail through the dense, untamed wilderness. It is slow, difficult, and requires immense energy. Conformity, on the other hand, becomes your brain's default setting. It feels easy, it feels right. This is not just habit, it is biochemistry. Every time you receive social validation for wearing your mask, a like on a post, a compliment on your work, a nod of approval in a meeting, your brain releases a small hit of dopamine. It's the same neurotransmitter involved in pleasure, reward, and addiction. You are, in a very real sense, being conditioned like a lab animal, trained by intermittent rewards to repeat the behaviors that please the invisible masters of the collective. You develop a low-grade, pervasive addiction to approval, and the withdrawal, that is the sharp, bitter sting of shame, embarrassment, or ostracism you feel when you even consider stepping out of line. The fear of that withdrawal is often enough to keep the addiction running for a lifetime. Your biology itself becomes a warden, ensuring you remain a compliant prisoner in a jail of your own making. With the neurological hardware in place, your mind then deploys its own security system in the form of cognitive biases. These are not flaws in your thinking. They are features designed to protect the integrity of your constructed reality. The most powerful of these is confirmation bias. Once you have internalized a societal script that success means wealth, that happiness means marriage, that value means productivity, your brain begins to actively filter the world to prove that script true. You will notice every article about a happy millionaire, every social media post from a seemingly perfect couple, every story of a successful entrepreneur who worked 80-hour weeks. Simultaneously, your brain will effortlessly ignore or forget the evidence that contradicts the script: the miserable millionaire, the trapped and unhappy spouse, the artist who lives a joyful life of minimalist obscurity. Your reality does not just seem to support your cage. Your brain is actively curating it to do so. You are the protagonist in a movie that you are also editing, and you are cutting out every scene that suggests you could leave the set. Compounding this is the devastatingly effective spotlight effect, the cognitive distortion where you feel as though a giant, judgmental spotlight is following your every move. The truth is, most people are far too busy managing their own masks and worrying about their own spotlights to pay much attention to you. Yet this persistent illusion of scrutiny keeps us in a state of low-level paranoia, constantly self-policing our behavior to meet the standards of an audience that, for the most part, doesn't exist. This internal surveillance is then amplified into a deafening roar by our culture. Our media, our entertainment, our education systems, they all function as a vast hall of mirrors. Everywhere you look, you see the same few life scripts reflected back at you 1,000 times over, creating the illusion that these are the only options available. To deviate doesn't just feel wrong, it feels delusional, like trying to walk through a wall. The unseen consequence, then, is this. You are living in a carefully tailored reality, a perceptual bubble created by the interplay of your own brain chemistry, cognitive shortcuts, and cultural narrative. The ultimate tragedy is not that you are unfulfilled, but that you have been prevented from ever realizing the sheer scale of what you could have been. You cannot mourn a life you never knew was possible. The bars of the cage are invisible because they are woven into the very fabric of your perception. So if your own mind and the world it perceives are both part of the prison, where in God's name do you even begin to look for the key? The answer, paradoxically, does not lie in fighting the cage, but in seeing it for what it truly is. The key you are looking for does not unlock the cage, it unlocks you. The great error, the reason every previous attempt to find freedom has likely ended in exhaustion and frustration, is that you have been trying to fight the prison. You have tried to argue with the thoughts of fear, to wrestle with the feelings of inadequacy, to break down the walls of cultural expectation with sheer force of will, but you cannot win a war against an enemy that is woven into your own neurology. To fight the cage is to fight yourself. The radical shift, the turn of the key, is this. You must stop fighting and start observing. Deep within you, behind the chattering voice of the persona and the turbulent storms of conditioned emotion, there is a silent, unmoving center. Call it consciousness, the witness, the observer self. It is the part of you that is aware of your thoughts, but is not the thoughts themselves. It is the part of you that feels your anger or fear, but is not the anger or fear. Your freedom begins the moment you can distinguish between the two. This is not a passive act, it is the most profound rebellion. You begin by cultivating a space between stimulus and response. The conditioned mind is a machine of instant reaction. A perceived slight immediately triggers defensiveness. The opportunity for praise immediately triggers performance. The fear of judgment immediately triggers conformity. The free mind, however, learns to inhabit the sacred pause. When a trigger appears, you don't react, you watch. You observe the impulse arise within you like a weather pattern. You feel the chemical pull of the dopamine craving or the cortisol fear. You watch the old, familiar thought highway light up, begging you to travel down it, and you simply don't. You breathe. You witness the entire mechanism without identifying with it. For the first time, you see the bars of the cage instead of just gripping them. And in that seeing, you realize they are not as solid as you believed. You're no longer the prisoner. You are the watchman in the tower, observing the prison yard below. The primary tool for this is subtraction, not addition. You do not need to build a new identity over the old one. That is merely redecorating the cell. True freedom is found in the relentless chipping away of everything that is not you. It is the path of the sculptor who sees the masterpiece inside the block of marble and knows that their job is not to create, but to reveal by removing the excess stone. Every societal expectation you release, every borrowed opinion you discard, every fear you see through, you are chipping away at the marble. This is the true purpose of practices like meditation or mindfulness. They are not merely for relaxation. They are training grounds for this radical act of witnessing. They teach you to sit in the fire of your own conditioned mind without getting burned, developing the muscle to differentiate the signal from the noise. This leads to a powerful shift in your relationship with fear. Instead of running from the thought, "What will they think?" you turn toward it with a kind of contemptuous curiosity. You'll put it under a microscope. Who, precisely, is they name and picture their faces? What is the substance of their judgment? A fleeting thought in their consciousness, which is just as chaotic and conditioned as your own. A piece of gossip that will be forgotten by tomorrow. When you dissect the monster of social approval, you find that it is almost entirely smoke. It is a ghost, a paper tiger whose only power is the power you grant it by believing it is real. You begin to treat your own fear as a fascinating object of study, not a command to be obeyed. Furthermore, you must fundamentally redefine your relationship with failure. The cage is built upon the terror of failure, the belief that a misstep is a final verdict on your worth. This is a lie. From this new perspective, failure is simply data. it is information. When you take an authentic action and it leads to an undesirable outcome, you have not failed. You have learned. You have gathered precious data about the nature of that particular path. Thomas Edison, when asked about his thousands of failed attempts to create a light bulb, famously said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways it won't work." This is not just a clever it is the core mindset of every true creator, innovator, and free spirit. They do not fear failure because they understand that failure is an indispensable part of the discovery process. It is the friction that sharpens the blade. By embracing failure as data, you give yourself permission to experiment, to risk, to be clumsy, to be human. You are no longer trying to perform a perfect life. You are simply living one. You are hacking new trails in the neurological forest. The old highways of conformity are still there, but you are no longer compelled to travel them. You are now a cartographer of your own soul, drawing new maps in real time. And this newfound freedom, this ability to navigate your own inner world, leads to the final, most powerful realization of all. A truth that changes not only how you see yourself, but how you see reality itself. You have learned to watch the prison instead of rattling its bars. You have become the cartographer of your own soul, bravely mapping the wilderness beyond the paved roads of conformity. This is a monumental achievement, a reclamation of agency that few ever undertake. But even this perspective holds one final, subtle trap. It presumes that the goal of mapping the wilderness is to find a specific, hidden location, a final destination marked with an X where your true self lies buried like treasure. For your entire life, you have been driven by this quest. You have been told to find yourself, be true to yourself, discover who you really are. And so you have dug through the layers of conditioning, peeled back the masks of the persona, and hacked through the neurological undergrowth, always believing that, at the center of it all, you would find a solid, immutable, and pristine core of identity. An authentic thing to finally be. This is the final and most powerful realization, the one that redefines the very nature of reality. There is no statue in the marble. There is no fixed, pre-existing true self waiting to be discovered. The entire concept of a static, essential self is the last and most elegant cage the mind has ever constructed. It is a beautiful and comforting lie. The search itself, the very idea that you are a finished object that has simply been lost, is the final barrier to ultimate freedom. You have been looking for a noun, when all along, you have been a verb. Your existence precedes your essence. Think about what that truly means. It means you were not born with a purpose. You are born with the capacity to create purpose. You are not a finished painting to be found in an attic. You are the raw, chaotic, and infinite potential of the paint and the canvas. The terrifying void of meaninglessness that you fled from at the very beginning was never a threat. It was an invitation. It was the silence waiting for a symphony, the blank page waiting for a poem. The horror of emptiness was merely a misunderstanding of what freedom truly is. You are not a thing to be found. You are a process to be lived. Your identity is not a destination you arrive at. It is a dynamic, fluid, and perpetual act of creation that happens in every single moment of choice. This insight reframes everything. The constant feeling of being an imposter. It was ironically the most authentic feeling you had. It was the whisper of truth telling you that any fixed identity you tried to wear would, by definition, be a costume. Because your nature is not to be, but to become. The struggle and frustration you felt trying to fit into even your own ideals was the inevitable friction of trying to force an infinite process into a finite box. You cannot pour the ocean into a cup. The liberation, then, is not in finding the right box. It is in embracing your own ocean-like nature. So what do you do with this staggering, terrifying, and exhilarating truth? You stop searching, and you start dancing. A search has an endpoint. A dance is about the quality of the movement in each moment. You stop asking the question, who am I? It is a dead question, for it presumes a static answer. Instead, you begin to ask, what will I create of myself in this next breath? What choice, in this moment, will add a new, interesting, and vital brushstroke to the ever-changing masterpiece of my becoming? Sometimes the brushstroke will be bold and vibrant. Other times it will be quiet and contemplative. Sometimes it will seem messy, a mistake, but you'll realize there are no mistakes. Only new data, new textures, new colors added to the canvas. You trade the burden of authenticity for the lightness of artistry. Let go of the need for a final answer. Let go of the desire for a stable, unchanging self. That is the longing for a beautiful death. Your life is not a problem to be solved, but a work of art to be created. And it is created not with grand sweeping gestures, but with the small, conscious choices you make every day. The choice to speak a difficult truth instead of offering a pleasing lie. The choice to listen to the faint, irrational whisper of curiosity over the loud roar of obligation. The choice to meet your own fear not with submission, but with the open gaze of the creator who sees all things as raw material. Stand before that mirror one last time. See the face, the skin, the eyes. But know that you are not looking at a final product. You are looking at the front line of creation. You are looking at the starting point of today's work. The mirror shows you nothing but yesterday's residue. It is in the choosing, it is in the doing, it is in the becoming. The masterpiece is not what you are, but what you will make of yourself next. Close your eyes, breathe, begin.